Hi, this is Donniel, Hartman, and Yossi, Klein, Halevi. And this is our podcast, For Heaven's Sake, from the Shalom Hartman Institute. Israel at war. Today is day 361. And our theme for today is after Nasrallah. But before we get to the theme itself, which I'm really looking forward to today's podcast because I have a lot of uncertainty. And there's a lot of things that I don't know. And there's a lot of things that I want to talk to you about and figure out. Because before Nasrallah, things were clear. After, things are changing. Where we're going, we have to figure out. And I feel that anybody who knows where we are is flawed. There's so much. Part of what we need to do is to try to make sense of this uncertainty. But first, today's a very special podcast. Its session is being typed live in front of an audience. Yossi, you and I were here in London, in the United Kingdom.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? It's a lovely Jewish community here.
Yes.
It's a beautiful city and a beautiful, beautiful Jewish community, which has embraced us and welcomed us in a very, very special way. And we're hosted by phenomenal partners, the UJIA, who play a vital role in ensuring that every young Jew across the United Kingdom has an opportunity to forge a personal relationship with Israel and develop a strong sense of belonging to the Jewish people. That's the official line.
I was wondering how you were going to handle that.
And they do it. And it's very, very beautiful to see. And the partnership, again, Hartman Institute, we love partners. We love local partners. Because it's only with local partners that you have any understanding of who you're talking to. And we don't have finer partners than the UJIA, and we're really honored to be here. And this taping is at Jews around the world. It's called JW3. And for those of you who don't know, this is London's only Jewish community center. And listening to us today is a live audience of young leaders, communal professionals, and part of our For Heaven's Sake community around the world. So thank you, and it's really a pleasure to be here. Let's try to figure out. None of us expected the last 10 days. None of us knew. None of us knew that Israel, you said it in the last podcast. I think your language was, you were pointing to the gap between the lack of intelligence in Gaza, and this is actually what we've been preparing for. I think you spoke about it. But none of us really expected.
Not to this extent.
Not this level of strategy, sophistication, precision, and success. And the last time I spoke about how I was upset at the beepers, because I didn't want us being pulled unprepared, being pulled into a military campaign, and one in which other options weren't explored.
Right, but you were also concerned that there didn't seem to be a strategic context.
Exactly.
It was just something we were doing because we were able to do it.
We were able to, and what made it even worse is we did it because, the news, nobody knows, but because they were about to discover, and so we had it, so we might as well use it before it gets discovered.
Which was my feeling.
It was,
if we have it, use it.
If you have it, but that's for me, that was like fakakt. Excuse my Latin. But that's a reason to go, and now way is going to lead to way, and we're going to go to war because we had it, we might as well use it. Turns out that I was wrong. And it turns out that there was a plan, and that I was looking last week 10 days ago, at the beepers and the beginning of that process through a lens of Gaza, which it wasn't just that we weren't prepared for October 7th. We had no plan for how to fight in Gaza. And after
it took
all
us 3 weeks before we even sent the ground forces into
that
Gaza.
Was again
because we had to come up with operational plans.
We had to come up with, and we were making still I feel like we're making it up as we're going along. And so I was to go into a war in Lebanon with huge consequences is something that frightened me deeply. But we're in the midst now of what seems to be a well thought through strategy. We're going to talk about it. But so how do you, when you think about now where we are, and again, today we're taping, it's day 361, just 20 minutes ago, missiles were fired at Tel Aviv, and one of them fell on Highway 6. Someone was moderately injured, not from the Houthis in Yemen, but from Lebanon, 6. There's tremendous uncertainty. Let's try to figure out where we are and make some sense of it. Not sense for the long run, as you know, but even just like what we know now, where after Nasrallah, all of this process, where are you?
So one of our recurring themes since October 7th on the podcast has been the loss of deterrence. It's something we've struggled with. Can one regain deterrence? What does deterrence mean? Is it such an abstract concept that really, in the end, has no significance? And what's worried me so much about the aftermath of October 7th was exactly this question of Israel losing its deterrence in the most unstable and dangerous region in the world. And how we have always seen our strategic advantage was really based on a kind of a balance of fear. Our enemies needed to fear us. They shouldn't cross a line. Now, of course, on October 7th, they crossed every line. And what made the defeat so profound was that Hamas was our weakest enemy. And that's exactly why we weren't paying attention to them. But the fact that our weakest enemy delivered the worst blow in our history meant that no one feared us anymore. And when the Houthis, whoever thought of the Houthis, when they started firing missiles at Tel Aviv, that for me that's the end of our deterrence. And what I feel we've regained in the last 2 weeks is, first of all, our self-confidence. And that's so important. Now, it's interesting because we know kids who have been fighting in Gaza. And the level of dedication, the morale, the sacrifice that these kids have demonstrated has to some extent compensated for the failure on the upper echelons. But Israeli society didn't have the self-confidence that our kids had at the front.
We needed this.
We really needed this. We needed this to believe in ourselves, to believe that we're able to protect ourselves. How many conversations have I had with Israelis over the last year saying, I don't know if there's a future here for my kids, my grandchildren. If we can't defend ourselves against Hamas, what future do we have? So for our long-term viability, we need to prove, first of all, so deterrence, in a way, is self-directed. To deter despair, Israeli despair.
I love your commentary on the idea that you've been talking about the whole year. Because from the beginning, I never thought in terms of deterrence, frankly. Because my brain doesn't think in these large global moves. That's why you think about Iran. I don't think as much. Now I'm starting.
You do morality for me.
But you had this deterrence. I said, okay, I hear Yossi talking about deterrence, but you're doing a phenomenal move today, which I really appreciate, because not only do I not think about deterrence, I don't rate it that high. Because radical Islam, I don't think there is a category of deterrence. Iran seems to have some calculations of its own success. But Hezbollah, Hamas, when you're willing to die, or when you're willing to send somebody else to die, which is very often the case, what does it mean, deterrence? So I never, reclaiming some deterrence was not, I want to come back to that, but I've been thinking about it. But your move was, it's that deterring, what would you say? To deter our own despair.
Yeah.
Qualifies as lovely.
So thank you.
It has an elegance. And I think a great depth to it, and you're right. There's been a tremendous amount of despair. But don't you fear, we're supposed to be always, after Aristotle, the mean, the golden rule, like supposed to be everything's supposed to be balanced, and life is never balanced. That's what makes it so insane. But we can go from despair. I'm frightened of the arrogance of power. I'm frightened of us thinking that we could just beep away all of Hezbollah. Our ground troops are coming in. We know what that could mean, the death. Like, it's going to require such levels of sophistication, such control, such disassociation of your political agendas. We are at a critical moment where we actually had a victory. We have removed, it's like Hanukkah, the light, all the despair, there is hope.
And there's something that you've said to me in the last days, which is that this is really the first taste of genuine victory we've had probably since the Entebbe rescue in 1976. We have not won a war since Yom
That could be
Kippur.
very intoxicating, by the way, for a country that, we use hard power, military power, as a necessary, not because we like it, but as a necessary vehicle for our survival. But one of the challenges in Israel is that it also, and I speak about it all the time, and I feel it, and I felt it so much this last year, it's instead of a en brera, something that you use as a last resort, it's sort of, it's a way for us to solve our problems. And with that arrogance, so I just hope that the military people, I have to tell you, I trust Gallant. I trust him. He's hurting his own political.
And Herzi Halevi.
I trust Herzi Halevi. I trust the people who are in the army. There seems to be a plan, but the plan needs to be a plan which doesn't go back to any of this arrogant language of complete and total victory.
Well, that's,
that's I'm now going to go. I'm going to go. And I ran. Like I could see the boastfulness, the arrogance. It's like, we're at a critical moment in our history. I don't know tomorrow. Today they're hitting Tel Aviv with 6. We're flying today back from London. I hope the airport will be open. Anybody who tells me they know that now, what we know is we know that we have reclaimed our place as a superpower in the Middle East. Do you know where I got that from? CNN. CNN, like when CNN is complimenting us, I'll take it. It's like interesting. We've reclaimed, and I want to think for a while about this because it has huge educational significance, reclaiming from the despair. But where do we go from here?
I want to go back to the point you raised a moment ago about the need to maintain a kind of emotional equilibrium. What is built in to the post-Holocaust Jewish experience is a kind of schizophrenia. We went from 1945 to 1948, from the lowest point of our powerlessness in our history to reclaiming sovereignty in 3 years. We went from May 1967, and you're a kid, you probably don't remember this, but I remember the Jewish world living in a state of dread that Israel is, God forbid, about to be destroyed. And then 3 weeks later, we're standing on the Suez Canal, we're on the Temple Mount, and on the Jordan River and in the Golan. And then we go from 1967
to 73.
To the despair and disorientation of 73. Then we go from 73 to
and the
Entebbe.
victory of 73.
But that was
that
lost.
doesn't count.
It was lost.
And then we go to Entebbe.
Then we go to Entebbe. And so there's this sense of we're either on the edge of destruction or we're invincible. And there's something in our immaturity as a sovereign people. We have not yet internalized that we've essentially survived. We've won. I mean, we've won. We haven't, it's not the happy ever after, but we have survived.
But you know what? When you speak about the schizophrenia, I don't get schizophrenia. One of the things that there was something that I learned early on in my BA has moved me and has shaped me and accompanied me for most of my life. The teaching of Socrates, when Socrates discovers that he is truly the wisest man on earth because he's the only one who knows that he doesn't know. And he had spent his whole career undermining those who claim to have knowledge. You know, one of the solutions for schizophrenia is understanding that you don't know. Seeing, like, understanding there's uncertainty. You get schizophrenic because you go from one certainty, from one low to, like, we have to embrace uncertainty. And then, like at this moment, because we could become schizophrenic again.
I think that's one piece of it. Another piece would be that we need to internalize a middle place, which is neither total powerlessness nor invincibility. You can have a great deal of power, as we have, and still be vulnerable. And being vulnerable is not the same as being a victim. And we don't know how to do that. How do you have power, and how do you maintain a position where you can defend yourself in vulnerability?
You're sounding a little bit like me, I think.
Uh-oh.
But I'm with you. Let's, though, go back to, I want to push a little bit more this notion of deterrence. Because, again, there's tremendous uncertainty that we're facing right now. Our kids are now in Lebanon, and we have bad history in Lebanon. And it's a frightening, dangerous place. And it doesn't have the cleanliness, the Mossad. Last night we were at an event at I think it was some war room place. And they had a room 007 where there was a reception. It's not James Bond.
007.
Oh, thank you. I grew up with James Bond as an Israeli. There was no Efes Kaful. It wasn't like, I think it was Efes Sheva. I didn't like that. I grew up with him as an Israeli teenager. But, it doesn't work that way. And it's a mess. And I hope we'll have the wisdom. But something still remarkable happened. And I think we have to talk about it.
Let's get back to that.
Let's get back. There's something, like, I've noticed, I've been watching the world, and I follow and consume. How are people talking about us? It's really interesting how there is Israel now in Lebanon is part of the Sunni coalition. Israel in Lebanon now is, our hope for some stability, for a better day after in Gaza, is about rebuilding and reclaiming the Sunni coalition. And but our politicians weren't ready to do that, because that Sunni coalition requires negotiations. That Sunni coalition requires finding Palestinians who you're willing to talk to. That Sunni coalition is going to require compromise in Judea and Samaria, not to speak about turning Gaza eventually over to some other political force, not seeing ourselves as having to be the perpetual leaders there. And basically, Netanyahu said, I'm giving up on the Sunni coalition now for the sake of my political coalition.
And this is his tragedy, because Netanyahu's whole political worldview was to integrate Israel into what you rightly call the Sunni coalition. And he has boxed himself in to such a state where he is his own worst enemy politically.
This is, again, I didn't want to believe it, but I think here you were right. I think your critique of Netanyahu in the past was, it was so devastating that I didn't want to believe it. But we did see in Gaza a choosing of a coalition for his government rather than a larger Sunni coalition, or
even saving the hostages, which is
I don't know whether we had that. Again, I'm not sure what chances we had. But let's leave that. But I'll accept that as well too. But now, it's interesting. Here, the Sunni coalition is being rebuilt after these 10 days, not by our willingness to renegotiate a future for the Palestinian people, but by the return of our aura as a superpower. And when we are defeating the Iranian proxies, no one's defeating Iran, but we are, these 10 days, as everybody says, and I'm just quoting, it's nothing that I learned from the Talmud, that we have basically defanged a core strategy of Iran to fight. Again, CNN says the same thing. When CNN says Israel has revealed Iran to be a paper tiger, these are really interesting critiques. So there is this something, we have to, something is moving. Where it's going to go, again, just like this war, these 10 days opened up opportunities.
So I think that before looking at the opportunities, these 10 days have taught us or reminded us of two essential points about the Middle East conflict. First of all, it's the Middle East conflict. It's not the Palestinian-Israeli conflict primarily. And of course, the international community, for understandable reasons, focuses obsessively on that part of the conflict. And if you just look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Israel versus Hamas, then we're Goliath, and they're David. But if you widen the lens, it depends how you read the map of the conflict. If your map of the conflict is Israel-Palestine, then we're the aggressor and the brute. But if your map is the Sunni coalition versus the Shiite coalition, and look, this was always a regional conflict. It was in Israel's formative years, it was the Sunni coalition against Israel. That began to break down first with Egypt, the Egyptian-Israeli peace agreement, and culminating with the Abraham Accords. And then, of course, if the Saudis come in, it is the historic end of the Sunni-Israeli conflict. And we are on the verge of that. And the second related point here is that peace is based on a strong Israel. It doesn't come when Israel is perceived as weak and ineffectual. It comes when we project our power. And Sadat, Egypt's President Sadat, made peace with Israel after the Yom Kippur War, when he realized that with all of the strategic advantages that Egypt and Syria had at the beginning of the war, and they still weren't able to defeat us, Israel is never going to be dislodged from the territories. He has no choice but to negotiate with us. It's on that basis that we make peace.
This wasn't what you were talking about, but as I heard what you were saying, I feel this need to say something. I agree completely about the issue of power. In the Middle East, if you don't have power, no one's making peace with you. I'm with you on that. I'm always frightened, though, of when people regionalize the conflict, even though I objectively agree with you.
And ignore the Palestinians.
Because it's the way to do it.
Yes.
It's and then you have, what's his name? He has those three letters from Saudi Arabia, MBSL.
MBS.
MBS.
That was the degree that he almost got.
No, MBS. When he says, I don't care about the Palestinian people, but I can do something because my people do. So I'm with you, and I see this now Sunni coalition, but for me, the Sunni coalition has to reinforce our commitment to resolve injustice. It can't be a tool to whitewash injustice. And we have to, and so that frightens me. So I'm with you, and I know you're with me too on this. So I hear it.
I am, but not at this moment. I'm not emotionally there. At this moment, I don't have the space, and maybe I should.
You should, Yossi.
All right,
no, you know why you should?
But
because
I'm telling you
here.
Honestly,
I know.
I don't have the space for it.
But right now, I'm telling you, it's coming.
And I'll say something terrible, but and something really perverse. But when MBS said that, part of me was saying, okay,
I know.
That's great.
I know.
And here is Saudi Arabia, which led the Arab war against Israel for 70 years. And now they're saying, the leader of Saudi Arabia is saying, I don't care about the Palestinian issue. I see that as as an Israeli win. You're saying it actually is self-defeating.
It's an opportunity. We have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity that by regionalizing the conflict, there are allies that could be created. See, I'm not passionate about about resolving the Palestinian conflict because a conflict that endangers us. I'm passionate about it because there's an injustice that's living in our midst. I don't want.
This is where you and I
It's like I
completely
can't.
differ.
So I just can't anymore. It's like I don't want to be that people. I don't want to be that. And part of the planning, when I see now this sophistication, this strategy. So I want strategy when it comes to the war, and that we fight in Lebanon with wisdom in the most minimal way possible. We need our citizens to be able to go home. We need our citizens. They have a right. Our country, our citizens can't go home. We have been terrorized by Hezbollah for years. Terrorized. Psychologically, we've been terrorized. You know, the one thing that every Israeli knows, we know how many missiles they have. Like, is that a normal thing? Like, if someone would say, you live here in England, like, how many missiles, who's your enemy? Like, how many missiles they have? Like, who counts missiles? Like, how do I know? Little kid, oh, they have 150,000 missiles. Really? And like, it's just insane. We've been terrorized by them. And they fire at will throughout. And they were always careful to use their weapons as a vehicle of terror. Because you're not trying to defeat us, you're trying to break our spirit, what you called that despair, with great success. So we have to go to war. We have to enable our citizens to be able to go home. And with a combination of brilliance, sophistication, strategy, and some ground troop movement, I hope we'll be able to do that. I just hope we don't go too far. Just like I hope we don't go too far with, yes, we're now the new superpower and everybody needs us, and therefore we don't have to worry about any of this little Palestinian Gazan mess.
I have a feeling that this time around we've been sufficiently chastened, and we're yes, these last 10 days have gone a long way toward restoring our confidence in the Army's capabilities, but there are still very basic questions that remain unanswered. How did October 7th happen? How is it possible that the Army not only wasn't defending the border, but seemed to disappear throughout the day of October 7th? There are deep questions here this is not June 1967, even with these tremendous victories.
I want to open up one other dimension, which I see after these 10, 12 days. And I see it as we begin to move into Lebanon, and I'm watching world conversation, I'm watching the news. Something that I think many of us Jews and us Israelis, we forget. Again, the world is with us. Part of it. Okay, I know. I can't say everybody.
Don't be too
enthusiastic. I know. But I'm a cup half full. Like there's the cup is partially full right now.
Yeah.
From Israel being the evil, colonial, genocidal, murderous power, murdering Gazan civilians, which has sort of dominated so much of public discourse. And I'm sure it'll come back.
We're still there.
We're still there, but it's a little quiet. It's remarkable how much support we have for this operation in Lebanon. I didn't think we were going to have this much support.
Yeah.
And I think it pays for us to analyze why. And one of the things that I want to put on the table is that the war in Gaza and the war in Lebanon are classic just wars. They're wars of self-defense. They're in that sense, they're no-brainers. We had a right to defend ourselves and to try to destroy Hamas. We have a right to try to remove Hezbollah's ability to terrorize our country, or more accurately, to move 150,000 people and another 500,000 people, to move them home, and the other 500,000 to move out of a constant missile barrage. These are when it comes to war, these are moral exercises of power. You have power to defend yourself, and that power is an exercise of your moral commitments. It's not politics. This is your basic right to self-defense. Love your neighbor as yourself. You have to love yourself. If all people are created in the image of God, you're created in the image of God. I could defend myself. And so it's interesting that even though we say the world is always against us and the world hates the Jews, this is a just war, and good forces around the world will say, yeah, we see this as a just war. And they know Iran is sitting in the back of their mind too as a just war. And Israel fighting, we're there. But there is something very interesting about just wars. And you and I have talked about it all throughout the year. Just wars have to be fought justly. And there's technical parts to that. Just wars have to be fought justly by distinguishing between civilians, between combatants and non-combatants, understanding that some non-combatants inevitably will be killed, especially when the enemy embeds themselves in their midst. But you have to do everything in your power to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. And that's what distinguishes between a terrorist organization and a moral army, all of that. But there's something else.
What distinguishes a terrorist group from a moral army? No,
you got to go.
That is that if you're negligent.
No, if you target.
If you target.
Fair enough. Good correction, accepted, 100%. Terrorist organization, milachatchila, initially removes that distinction, because in order to terrorize, it has to. It doesn't want to fight an army. Right. It wants to fight us.
Right.
But there's something else that I felt very strongly after these 10 days. It came to me. To fight a just war justly, that means to use your force to kill people and to understand that inevitably non-combatants will also be killed because that's what happens. You have to have a strategy of victory. If you don't have a strategy of victory and you're just fighting day in and day out, even though your impetus was just, even though October 7th happened, at some point, you run out of your claim to be able to fight a just war. It's only just to the extent that you actually have a strategy to win. Otherwise, you're just killing people. Here, we have a strategy. Point. There is a strategy. Here it is. We want to people see that strategy, and they're looking at it and they're saying, okay, fight this war. This is a just war. But again, if we think that this is going to give us a carte blanche, and we're going to try to set a la the first war in Lebanon, a new order in Lebanon. Modesty, uncertainty. Something happened.
Even the way we're framing this incursion, we're deliberately calling it a limited incursion. Now, it could, of course, escalate, but that's how we're framing it.
So I hope this is something that it pays for us to remember. The world is not, there are enemies, Yossi, don't worry, I know there's some anti-Semitism, but people, when we function within a moral discourse and within moral parameters, which include fighting a just war, fighting it justly, which means what is your strategy for victory? Not just I'm continuing to fight because I have coalition partners who tell me that if I stop the war, they're leaving the coalition. And by the way, I'm afraid of the same thing because those voices are now talking about Lebanon also. Like, what's going to be enough? If we get to the Litani and our citizens could go back home, is that enough? Or people say, oh no, you had a chance now to completely wipe the complete total victory in Lebanon fantasy.
I think it's a really important point you're raising in terms of the connection between maintaining our moral credibility and our ability to win, whatever winning means, whatever goals we set for ourselves. And this is something that some of our right-wingers don't understand. They see moral constraints as weakness. In fact, moral constraints enable us to fight the war. It gives us breathing space. It gives us the backing to fight the war. And this notion of what they perceive as weakness is really our strength. And that's been our strength all along. And so what has made it so difficult this year is that we've been fighting by far our ugliest and most brutal war, what I believe also one of our most necessary and unavoidable. But to have this government, which lacks the most basic moral credibility, never mind in the world, for so many of us in Israel, for Jews around the world, that has been an additional anguish. And you're right. Now there's this feeling that not only have we reclaimed the higher ground militarily, strategically, but maybe also morally.
We have to hold it, and that will require a lot of wisdom. Yossi, thank you for, I'm thinking this through, and I really appreciate being with you.
Yeah,
friends, this is, for heaven's sake, Israel at war. day 361.
London.
In London, with good people. And while we're basking in some success and uncertainty still awaits us, we're still going to remember that it's 361 days and our hostages are still in tunnels and not at home. Yossi, nice to be with you.
Great to be with you.
Be well.
You can now sponsor an episode of For Heaven's Sake, Israel at War. The link to donate can be found in the show notes or at shalomhartman.org/For Heaven's Sake. We will acknowledge your gift on a future episode. For more ideas from the Shalom Hartman Institute about what's unfolding right now, sign up for our newsletter in the show notes or visit